Matt Watson from SuperMega has proven with the release of his debut album See You There that he is a genuine and legitimate musician that should be taken seriously in the industry. In terms of the alternative indie bedroom pop vibe the internet creator is aiming to achieve here, I can say with relative certainty that he's outdone many of this year's most esteemed records of those same genres. Now that's not to say that this is a particularly groundbreaking or hugely innovative project, but it's certainly an impressive one that you can tell a lot of care and effort was put behind, especially for a debut. Pretty much every aspect of Watson's previous works, most notably the Ouch EP, has been extremely improved upon, especially in the production side of things. Now it's not every day that one of the planet's greatest boxing prospects produces an album that's actually palatable on the ears. But our sweet old Matt Watson has achieved such a thing, and if I were to be bold, I might even say the quality of this music slightly edges the quality of his boxing. Look, to be brutally honest, I'm gonna have to separate my long-time viewership and fondness for the SuperMega channel and the character of Matt with the quality of his art, which I've always found slightly difficult to do. That being said, there are a lot of quirks to this project that I find to be objectively quite good, and others that are rather bad, obviously. I just think that so much of the sound that comes out of this thing is immediately lovable despite various derivative or generic aspects, a great example fittingly being the album's opener. So let's get into track analyses. STARSTUD has one of the most generic lyrics in any song I've heard this year. I'm dead serious, literally anybody on the planet could have written these lyrics. But it's done so tastefully. The instrumentation is very easy on the ears, Matt's vocals have improved drastically from Ouch, with a genuinely impressive falsetto for the majority of the track. There's a pretty sweet and catchy outro melody. It's not amazing or anything, but it delivers a clear, crisp and wholesome sound that you can't help but bump to. Not to mention a very decent Sarah Benito feature to boot. It does a good job opening the album and establishing Matt as a producer. He knows his way around a synth to say the least. I think Work It Out is a far better song however, with a more engaging synthy pop vibe and a clearer, more fluent vocal performance.
Hello, yeah, I don't know what I was on about here. It's not a bad song, but it's not as good as the opener, like at all.
Not to mention stronger lyrics, where Matt seems to be detailing his experience coming up in the industry and first moving to LA. I'm a fan of how the hook to this song becomes more punchy and positively powerful every time it comes around. I don't know how much of the record is produced by Matt himself, I'm sure it wasn't all him, but either way, the production, whilst not mind-blowing, suits the song and sounds good enough. OK then explores Matt's existential dread as he grows older, reminiscing his teenage years, hinting to the listeners that he desperately wishes to be a teenager once again. However, the production remains poppy and optimistic, which is a contrast I feel as though could have been toned down ever so slightly. Though I do appreciate how the album takes a sudden dive at this point from some undeniable positivity to a darker and sadder place. As we'll see, from this point forward, things get progressively drearier. In terms of this song itself, I think the lyrics are some of the strongest on the entire project, but the other aspects such as the excessively sunny guitar chords, somewhat weak one-note vocal delivery, and bland instrumental prevent me from returning to it. However, I would never go as far as to call it bad by any means. It's definitely one the hardcore SuperMega fans will really appreciate. Coral also has a lot of good aspects to it, but as a complete final song, could be a lot better. The aquatic title I believe mainly refers to the instrumental and reverb vocals that display a real underwater feel. The guitar tones permeate through this wavy and dreamy synth underbelly quite successfully, and the spare's vocals do a good job broadening the immense scale and space I feel as though the track is attempting to pull off. I will say though it does drag on for about a minute too long. There's a fair bit of dead air without enough interesting or dynamic sounds to justify its repetitive nature, so whilst I do enjoy the grander scale, the song struggles to find the perfect balance. But it's something that could become a far more innovative listen with some gnarly riffs during those empty spaces. It's almost as though there was meant to be a solo or some of those said riffs at points, but they just forgot to add them in. So there's just a couple of excessively styling aspects to it. Wacky seems to be a tune about unrequited love from the perspective of one of them wacky waving inflatable arm men, which I suppose are quite popular in America. I like this one quite a bit. I think it's funny. So the main body of the song lyrically is humorous and creative, but not too impressive in terms of sharp or clever writing, and the vocals aren't anything to write home about either. The production is good but not great. I like the synth, the glockenspiely and harpy sounds that come with it, but I'm not too keen on the hi-hats. Despite all that, the song is elevated hugely by a really solid surprise guitar solo at the end that comes completely out of left field. Kudos to Matt if he made that solo, but I don't think he did. It's just a little too good. No offense, Matt Watson, if you're watching this. But it adds a really necessary oomph and emotion that brings the track from meh to a good, solid song. Like really getting across to us listeners the insane desperation emanating from the titular wacky waving inflatable arm man. I really wish more of that guitar instrumentation could be seen throughout the whole project, because it really would have taken it up a notch. Weirdly enough, I think it was exactly what a track like Coral was missing. Still I Dream of It is a pretty interesting one because it's a cover, for a song by none other than the Beach Boys too. But it's such an obscure track in their catalogue, and it's not like it suits the overall themes that this record is going for. Other than, I guess, maybe wanting to be young again at a stretch. That being said, these are probably the strongest lyrics on the album in terms of poeticism and sharpness, which I know is a very backhanded compliment considering they're the only lyrics that Watson didn't write. But it's not an insult at all, I mean, it's the Beach Boys for crying out loud. The sound of this cover part of the song is fine as well, nothing too crazy, but it's a decent little interlude, it does what it needs to do. But then there's some weird transition to a song voicemail where Matt pleads with the caller to leave a text because he's probably really busy out having sex, which I believe to be a subtle reference to the copious amount of sex that Matt Watson has. Then Ryan McGee leaves a voicemail, and I think it's actually a pretty nice addition that continues the project's themes of overthinking and obsessiveness. It's a pretty goofy track, but I dig it. I definitely don't hate it. Aquarium is a shocking standout amongst this group of songs here. I think that it might technically be one of the best on the album. So this track describes someone's obsessive attraction towards a missing persons victim, and how he doesn't want anyone else to find them before he does and take them away from him. So it's a very easy concept to just discount as something way too goofy to pull off in a serious manner, but the production actually makes it sound more sinister than comedic, and it's a tone that I think suits it a lot better, so I'm really glad that Matthew took this approach. The vocals are undoubtedly the most impressive on this album too. The hook is catchy yet dark, the lyrics are good too. I think this is definitely a sound that Matt ought to hone in on and really perfect, because he's really onto something here. You can make something great out of this. Much like the rest of the record, you can see such huge heaps of potential here. Ring Pop is one of the least entertaining on the album, however. It's definitely one of the safest despite how different it is from a lot of the record in my opinion. The flows and wordplay, whilst not bad, aren't really too interesting either. It's not a bad song, it's just slightly underwhelming for me. I think Father's verse is a lot better, but Matt himself is just slightly dull. He could really do with some more charisma in his delivery and some sharper writing, but that all comes with time. Balance is another one that I'm not too crazy about. Despite being one of the singles, it feels a little bit fillery. There's a decent punchy bass, but I don't really dig the guitar here as much as I did previously. The chords feel a little disjointed and amateurish from the rest of the production, like he's just playing random chords without actually knowing what he's doing. I'd be surprised if he knew how to play this song, or any of these songs for that matter, which I know sounds a little bit harsh, but again, it's not bad at all. It's just slightly insipid for my tastes. After two supposed duds, you begin to wonder, well, this is quite an inexperienced and new musician in terms of professional studio recording. Perhaps in an attempt to keep as much momentum as possible, he's used all of his good tracks at the start, and the second half is ought to be a lot weaker. Luckily, however, Stupid is a contender for my favourite song on the project. I've been focusing on the lyrics quite a bit in this video, but this song only really has a handful of words. Despite that, however, I really enjoy it. The instrumentation has a distinct Joji sort of feel to it, on one of his best produced projects. Except with, honestly, better vocal delivery. I'm a big fan of the effects on Watson's voice, and the lack of effect on the backing vocals. Despite the lyrics being sparse, they're fairly strong and they have a reason to be repeated so often. It continues the theme of the record, perhaps detailing the reasoning behind the demise of whatever relationship Matt was singing about in the intro song STARSTUD. Because there does seem to be a concept to this whole album. I really appreciate how the instrumental builds and becomes more punchy as the track goes on, and then has a little outro to really let you wallow in the sad boy vibes being emanated here. Yeah, this is a really good one in spite of its simplicity. I don't think the vocal effects work nearly as well for Even Now or the second interlude, at least for the first verse. The second verse, however, is built up with a really raw and percussive setup, then some more of Matt's most emotive and decisive vocals yet, which make the interlude very palatable. It does what it needs to do, and I appreciate its place in between Stupid and the closing track, especially considering how all three of these songs transition into each other. Nebraska describes the hopefulness of a new relationship and the reassurance of Matt to the partner, which is a really sweet note to end the record on. If you look at it cynically, this record could be looped, doomed for Watson to repeat this cycle of failed relationships, but you could also interpret it as the character having learnt from the introspection in tracks like Stupid and obsessive thoughts in tracks like Aquarium to really not screw this one up. I think Nebraska, outside of the context of this record, is miles better than anything else on this album. Like, if I was to recommend one song from this record to get someone into Matt Watson, it would be Nebraska. He definitely wanted to save the best till last, because this is a really good track. Vocal delivery is bold and ambitious, the 80s style pop sound is really smooth and dreamy, the drums and bass give it a really nice groove, the outro references the second track Work It Out Beach Life and Death style, and then finishes with a dope orchestral outro that's pretty impeccably produced and sounds great. sort of embracing the bedroom pop aesthetic that made artists like Rex Orange County so big. And I actually think that this album is stronger than Rex's major label debut album Pony, as well as Joji's latest album Smithereens, both of which are similar in terms of genre. In finality, I think this is a very enjoyable project with tons of potential, and I'm so curious as well as excited to see where Matt goes in his music career following this album. Because if he improves with a similar improvement from Ouch to See You There, we really could get something great. Yeah, Matt's onto something here, and he's playing an important role in getting people to take quote-unquote YouTube musicians seriously. Upon re-listening to this record a couple of times for this video, there was never a point where I thought, oh no, not this one. Sure, there are tracks I don't like, I think there are patches of blandness and quite a bit of weak writing. Some of the guitar work was relatively tame and a lot of the production was slightly amateurish, but I could listen to this whole thing with no skips and not hate a single moment of it, which is more than I can say for most albums. I'm giving See You There by Matt Watson a 6 out of 10. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. As always, all likes, comments and subscriptions are very much appreciated. Much love to you all, and I'll catch you in a bit.